Welcome into the Gaming Discourse. I'm Tyler Frater alongside Richard Day the Cruz, who is not here today, and Chief Engineer Lieutenant Commander Connor Frater.
Good evening.
We're back in the same room. We're back after a few weeks remote, so that's always great. Chemistry is better when we're sitting across the table instead of dealing with Reaper hating Skype and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We're now in the same room, which is great. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse. Go check out the new video, Into the Radius. Forgot about it for a second. Go check out the new video, Into the Radius. Sort of a review/analysis of Into the Radius, which is a small world, but an open world stalker like survival horror inventory management game.
This was your second Into the Radius video, right?
Yeah, because the first one was when the game was in early access. That was a year or so ago, or a little bit more than that, probably maybe 2.5 years ago. The game came out of early access. There's a quest edition that I think maybe just released today or yesterday, or it's releasing soon. So the game is officially out of early access, so I wanted to go back and sort of play through it, because the first time I only played 10 hours. This time I went through, played the entire game. So go check that video out. Besides this podcast, I'm on a staycation at the moment, so I'm not working on a new video. Nice. But I have a video that I want to make. So as soon as the staycation is done, that'll be something I'll start to work on. But yeah, not doing that just yet. We do have news. We have PSVR 2 news, lots of leaks and scandals. The GTA 6 leak, which is a little bit of a bigger issue because it also comes with hacking and blackmail. Well, I don't know if that's that's extortion, right? Because I think technically isn't blackmail. You're going to tell somebody something they did illegal or something.
I don't know, but I think the proper term for this one is extortion.
Yeah, okay. Because I think blackmail has to do. I don't know what the legal difference is. We'll go with extortion.
Yeah.
And of course, we've been playing games.
Yes.
So why don't you start off with what you've been playing?
I've been playing more Cult of the Lamb.
Okay.
It's the procedurally generated little dungeons you go on to gather resources, gather new followers, and eventually kill political and religious leaders. Not political leaders, religious leaders.
Sure.
Even though saying that on the internet probably doesn't have a difference. I'm already on a watch list, so it's fine. Going to kill them is really fun. They can be very challenging at times if you just don't get like good dungeons. Like it's just the same type of enemy that like leaves like a spike trail behind it that's almost impossible to avoid unless you're just dodging everywhere. You take a lot of damage and then you get to the boss and it raffle stomps you. Anyway, also been playing Europa Universalis.
Yeah.
Just been playing through different areas, doing little personal achievements, form Great Britain, form the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, form Russia, stuff like that. Just dabbling in there, waiting for Victoria 3 to release like 3 weeks.
With these types of games, so sorry, talk about Victoria 3. Because I had a question.
Ask.
With these types of games, because they're played in real time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you click on an army, you send them to a place, that army marches there slowly. You can watch them like a really slow loading screen. That's all this game is, an interactive loading screen.
It's UI and loading screen.
So is there ever moments where you have to be really quick on the mouse? Or is it usually like you don't, because everything is a slow burn, slow build? Or are there any quick twitch moments where you have to be like, oh shit, and you have to go like before another country beats you to it or something like that?
Yes and no. In Hearts of Iron, there's a lot more of that because you can control the individual like regiments on a front line, and if the enemy pulls back and leaves an opening, you want to be able to fill that void before they reinforce their line.
Okay.
So you have to get troops moving there, and you have to get right ones moving there, stuff like that.
If you play the game at a slower speed, though, reaction time doesn't matter as much, right?
Yes and no.
Okay, well,
because some of the so specifically for Hearts of Iron, reaction speed does matter at a slower pace because the game's provinces are smaller. The provinces are broken down into smaller provinces so that the dynamic front line that builds as you fight a war can ebb and flow in different provinces, and those little pockets can open up, and you can get your breakthroughs and whatnot. On games like Europa Universalis, where it's, one province may cover a third of a country.
Sure.
Not so much. If you see them moving, it does take them a while to move through the province. You can see a little progress bar. On your troops, at least, there's a little progress bar that fills out their movement. A loading screen, if you will.
There's a gameplay loading screens.
Hell yeah. And you can hover over enemy armies and see where their movements are going and where they're expected to be there. And watching them, there will be a little lock icon that signifies that, okay, they are locked into this movement. They will arrive on this day. And depending on how you're playing, you may want to, once they're locked in, send your army to march in there to catch them and get a battle going.
Okay, cool. Sorry, just a random question.
Oh, no, fine.
But yeah, you're excited for Victoria 3.
Yes.
Which you told me the other day was the most complex of Paradox games.
I would say it's the most complex of Paradox games.
Which is crazy.
Of the Paradox Grand Strategy games. Because all the little fiddly bits of Crusader Kings with character relationships and the macroeconomics of Europa Universalis and the production and resource management of Hearts of Iron. That's all in Victoria 3, plus population management.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
And you're just geeked out, ready to go.
Oh,
huh?
yes. I want to make some weird, funky Victorian nations.
Well, I'm excited for you. I hope you enjoy it. Anything else? You were playing another...
Yes, I bought a game today.
Yeah.
Bear and Breakfast. It is a game where you play as a bear who finds and starts running a bed and breakfast for humans.
A+ idea.
A+ idea. The bear's name is Hank.
A++.
A++. And you and your two friends discover a timeshare / pawnbroker that gives you the idea of running a bed and breakfast. So you run a bed and breakfast for humans that are coming back to this touristy area in the woods.
But you haven't gotten very far into it.
No, I was playing about 30 minutes and we decided to start the podcast.
Okay, cool. Well, I hope it looks good. It looks fun, and that's a kind of a fun idea. I don't know how many bed and breakfast simulators there are out there, but
off the top of my head, I can't really think of it.
But I mean, there's restaurant simulators, hotel simulators, hospital simulators. So I'm assuming it's probably something that's been done before, or somewhat similar.
But none that you play as a bear.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say probably none that where you play as a bear. Okay. So the Half-Life 2 VR mod came out last week. We talked about this on Tidbits.
I'm gonna have to try that after the podcast.
It's amazing. It's Half-Life 2 in VR. It's exactly how you would imagine it, and it's exactly how you would hope it is. It's smooth. It works. It's a great mod. I don't know. I was playing through it, and Half-Life 2 is already an amazing game.
Yeah.
So Half-Life 2, whatever, we all know it, iconic, etc. Right. The VR mod, though, is just really well made. It's really similar to Half-Life Alyx. In fact, it kind of feels like Half-Life Alyx. You can imagine Half-Life Alyx being a sequel to Half-Life 2 VR.
Yeah.
Because they took a lot of similar ideas from Alyx, which I thought was interesting because they'd been working on this Half-Life 2 mod for a long time, and a lot of these ideas are clearly coming from Alyx. So, for example, one thing, to select your weapons with your right hand, you press down a button and a little weapon wheel type thing comes up, and you move your hand, you let go, and that weapon appears in your hand. So you can't drop your weapons or anything like that. When you reload the pistol, you press a button, the magazine drops out, you grab with your left hand, you grab behind your back over your shoulder, you pull out a new mag, you put it into the gun, you're good to go. If you fire enough rounds that the magazine the magazine empties and the gun empties, the slide goes all the way back. You put a new mag in. You don't have to pull back. You just touch this slide with your offhand, just like you press a button and it slides up and it's good to go. So the weapon mechanics are there because reloading is fun in VR. All that stuff is fun.
It really is.
And then it gets into like how complex do you want to make, how granular, how complex you want to make reloading. And there's different levels of fun and different reasons for doing different levels of complexity to reloading. But it's a reloading that I think fits with Half-Life. It doesn't make it feel like a simulator.
Yeah.
It's really easy to reload your guns. I have not gotten to the antlions, but I have.
Oh boy.
I got through Ravenholm, which was amazing. It was so much fun playing through Ravenholm. The last time I played through Half-Life 2 was before Alex. Before that, it was a couple of years. It was a while. So I'm not somebody that I have a lot of Half-Life 2 like memorized. Like I would encounter puzzles and I was like, oh shoot, what do you do here?
Yeah.
How do you get past this part again? So rediscovering that was a lot of fun. But it's a really smooth, really well made, just excellent mod. And when you experience all that stuff in VR, it's going to sound cheesy. It's just magical. It's just amazing. And I had questioned how Half-Life's combat would work in VR, because in Half-Life Alyx, they changed combat to make it really limited. You go up to battle, or you fight maybe a squad of dudes in a really enclosed space, kind of like a small arena type thing with some places for cover. And they did that because all the different accessibility options. You may, as Alyx, you may be moving with teleportation. If you're moving with teleportation, enemies are going to have to be positioned in a way that complement that teleportation, right? Half-Life 2 has combat that is closer to like Doom and Quake. Not exactly the same, but closer to that than the survival horror, you versus a squad of dudes in Half-Life Alyx. It was closer to like the stuff of the 90s. And so all those quick you're sprinting around as Gordon Freeman. There's tons of guys everywhere. That works, and it just works. You don't, the way I have it set up is a smooth turn. You click to sprint, no matter where you push with the analog stick. Gordon Freeman runs that way, just like you would with a keyboard and mouse. And it's smooth. And, I'm not someone that is susceptible, or I have a high tolerance for motion sickness. So I'm able to go through those sections and run around really quickly while like shooting in different directions. There's a really great, the Resident Evil 2, and it reminds me a lot of the Resident Evil 2 VR. That was a game. That wasn't a mod. That was an official remake. But the Resident Evil 2 VR remake was amazing because it's like you imagine, okay, how would a Resident Evil game play in VR? And it was exactly that. And it was phenomenal. So Half-Life 2 is much the same way. And it kind of reminds me of that because it's like, how would you want Half-Life 2 to work in VR? And it's the same thing. It works. It's fantastic. The boat sequence, I was playing the boat sequence. This is a sequence I think many people may have trouble with because you're moving really fast in this boat. But it's basically you're controlling the boat with your analog stick. And so you're just kind of, I don't know. I don't know how to talk the way you would imagine it. You're stationary and you're moving in a vehicle. Eventually you get your gun, and then how the gun works is your left trigger or your left controller you push to steer the boat around. Your right trigger you point around, and your gun matches where your controller is pointing. You pull the trigger to shoot. So there's that really fun boss fight with the helicopter that's chasing you, and it drops mines and stuff. Oh my god, that was so much fun because I was dodging the mines and I was looking up and then back down to steer away from the mines and looking back up to shoot at the helicopter, and it was a whole lot of fun to do that. So I mean, I haven't fought the antlions. The reason I brought up the antlions is because the antlions in Alyx were turned into like a shooting gallery type thing. You shot their legs, they crawled at you really slowly. I don't think I ever got like attacked by antlions in Half-Life. I mean, I was attacked, but they were far away. They never got close to me because they like crawl up on you and you shoot them, as opposed to Half-Life 2, where the antlions are like flying and like hoarding and going all over the place, and it's crazy. So I'm excited to get there to see how that feels. The antlion army, whatever it's called, the antlion soldier, the big one, the bull. I'm excited to eventually get to that. So yeah, I really can't say enough to how good the mod is. It's just like somebody needs to make a Dead Space VR mod. It's possible. Somebody needs to make
that'd be
a Halo. I know there's a Halo VR mod out there that the person who made it, I think, works at 343 now. But it's just like this stuff. It's possible and it should be done, and it makes me think about like what the future is, because all this stuff shows that you can make these types of games in VR. You just have to know what you're doing. And it's so awesome to revisit Half-Life 2 in VR. I think that's pretty much all. I mean, I've been playing a lot of different games, but as far as games I want to talk about, was there one other game? No, I think that's it. I think that's all for now. So, why don't you hit the ad?
We want to give a massive shout out to the sponsors of this episode. They have been silently supporting us since the very beginning, and we felt it was time to give them some love. The like and share buttons have been at our side since episode 1 of the podcast. They can be found just beneath this episode. Please give them a click, it helps us greatly. If you're feeling lucky, click the bell icon to enter for a notification anytime we post new content. You may be surprised by what you get.
All right, we're going to start off with this big GTA 6 leak. So if you haven't heard, over the weekend, a hacker claimed to have accessed Rockstar's employee Slack channel and posted a link to the unofficial GTA forums, which led to 90 videos of in-development game footage. Footage seemed to confirm what Bloomberg had reported a few months ago, which we talked about, which is that the game was set in Vice City and that there will be at least one playable female protagonist, which I think is the first in GTA series history. I don't know if there was a DLC that had a playable female protagonist, but as far as
don't think so.
Like mainline games, that's the first. Axio Steven Totillo pointed out that the hacker claims to be trying to strike a deal with Rockstar or Take-Two, threatening to release, among other things, GTA 5 and 6's source code. So I don't think there's a whole lot about the hack itself we can say that a lot of people have. This is not a good thing. This is not a thing that should happen. This is extortion. This is wrong. And I think at the end of the day, Take-Two, I think it was Take-Two's stock price took a little bit of a hit. I'm not sure how much that really matters in the grand scheme of things. But the people that this really hurts the most are the devs. So, if you're looking forward to GTA 6, I don't know why you would advocate or want something like this to happen, because I think at the end of the day, the people that it's going to trouble the most are going to be the developers, right? Strauss Zelnick maybe will get, I don't know. I'm speculating here, but I don't think Strauss Zelnick is going to lose too much sleep over this, because he's a billionaire and he's a CEO, and Take-Two has much bigger things to take care of. And they want GTA 6 to do well, but I feel like, it's the people that are actually the actual artists and the people that are working on the game that are probably going to be dealing with the brunt of the issues that arise from this, whether it's the meetings, whether it's people asking them questions about it, whatever. I feel like that's probably safe to say. We're gonna get into a similar story in a little bit, and there's gonna be some overlap, but I think another thing that makes this difficult is marketing and hype culture is bad in video games. And this kind of stuff only makes things worse. And when I say this kind of stuff, it's like, okay, so it's one guy that released leaked stuff, right? But just the culture where that sort of thing is, there are entire subreddits where it's game leaks and stuff like that. And there's a big discussion about the ethics and what about reporting on games and there's all kinds of people with all kinds of opinions about that. But I feel like maybe at the core, it's this, there are communities that like crave bits of information that may not exist about games. And if that culture weren't there, that would solve a lot of the problems of why these leaks are valuable or happening, or stuff like that. So how do we solve that problem? I don't know. Well, is there anything you want to say? I think we should sort of loop in this next story because it's really similar, but about this specifically.
Not yet. Let's go ahead and continue.
Okay, so unrelated to the GTA 6 leak, a YouTuber confessed to being a game leaker. Dan Allen Gaming confessed to running the Twitter account The Real Insider. It happened after Allen responded to someone on Twitter with the Real Insider account instead of his own account. Dan Allen, who I don't know if that's his real name or not, this is a YouTube name, so that's what I'm going to use, was just breaking embargoes for news and wasn't actually getting insider info and like being a sleuth. So if you're unfamiliar, press or influencers will get PR emails from PR teams, from communications managers and stuff. And a lot of times there's embargoes where it's like, hey, don't talk about this until 5 days from now at this time. And they do that for a lot of reasons. They do that so it gives everybody time to
read it, go over it,
get
a grasp, ask any questions.
Yeah. So everybody knows what's going on and everybody's on the same page. And it helps them so that they don't have to start fielding a bajillion questions and doing 1,000 things because they know on this day, this is when we're going to announce the news. And they have everything lined up. They have deadlines for when things are going to be finished. So it helps them out. So there are reasons, there are totally ethical embargoes, and the past embargoes can be a bad thing, but there are totally ethical reasons for embargoes to exist. And so when you're breaking that embargo, you're not like, that's not some daring like leak or whistleblower. You're just getting news from somebody who trusts you with it.
Yeah.
And then you're just turning around and giving it
an asshole.
You're just being an asshole. Stuff like this happens, I think, because you want traction. So from a PR perspective, and I'm not an expert in PR, but from a PR perspective, you want traction for your game, right? You want to get it out to as many people that can see it, right? Especially in today's day and age, because there are a billion storefronts, but it's also a saturated market, right? Okay, so you want to get your game out. The problem, though, is you want security for that. You don't want to just send out a bajillion codes to a bunch of press, and then there's 2 reviews, right? So all that is understood. So how do you balance that? How do you get press out about your game, get news out about your game, inform people about your game while protecting your game? And that's a tricky problem that there isn't a single solution for. There are third-party like PR companies that handle PR for all kinds of games. Terminals is one that we have a membership with. Keymailer is another one that handles mostly keys, but Terminals does news, and they send out all kinds of stuff. Hey, this game's getting an update. Here's the embargo for the news. That's not stuff we do because we don't cover that. But if you're a PC gamer and you're writing up little snippets about the news on that day, that's something that you would use. So how do you balance that? Security versus traction is difficult. Another thing that makes it difficult is this new media landscape we're in, because you have traditional press outlets, you have PC Gamer, Kotaku, blah, blah, blah. But then you have YouTubers like us, right? And you have influencers, people whose positions online are even more nebulous. Streamers. Yeah. Like, what does a streamer do? What is their content? What do they stream? Okay, but like, what is that? It's more complicated than PC Gamer, where it's like, we write these stories, streaming can be a little more nebulous and a little more wide ranging. So how do you vet people? How do you choose people? How do you decide this person's trustworthy, this person isn't? A lot of that's really complicated, and it's kind of a shot in the dark. So especially with smaller companies, I sympathize. And I also sympathize when companies just don't want to give any news. Yeah. As much as that bothers me, I can see why, like Valve doesn't talk a lot, and I could kind of understand why, because they don't have to. And why deal with that? Why deal with and they already have to put up with tons of rumors and speculation and stuff like that.
And requests for a third.
Yeah. Go ahead. You look like you were.
Oh no. Keep going.
Oh, okay. No. So, but the flip side of that is, hype culture and marketing, right? So I have sympathy. I sympathize with people who are trying to figure out, how do we get our game out there? How do we protect our game? And how do we inform people accurately about the game? But then you have the flip side where the marketing and hype culture is not an authentic way, and you're not just getting news out about your game. You're generating sometimes lies, sometimes just trying to generate hype. And that can become itself unethical. And that's where the video game press and good content creators have to step in, and they have to be that filter of, okay, so you say that this game has 50 hours of content. Okay, well, what kind of content? What constitutes your game's content?
Is it 5 hours of story and
sure
45 hours of collecting collectibles?
Exactly. And that's the thing. And so we, as press, you have to filter that. Another term is the gatekeeper. That's an old like newspaper term, the gatekeeper, right? Like, what do you allow through? What do you put what do you put eyeballs on and stuff like that? And that's something that the press struggles with for a number of reasons, because a headline, Cyberpunk is 200 hours long. Like, that's a big headline. The other one, what's that zombie game that came out this year that you didn't like with parkour?
No, it's Dying Light 2.
Dying Light 2. Yeah, remember, I don't know if you remember this, but Dying Light 2 had like, oh my God, it's going to be 200 hours worth of content, right? This big story, and people were reporting it. Dying Light director says 200 hours worth of content. And then like a week later, it was like, okay, well, the story's going to take 20 hours. And then, because it's like people poke and prod, and you get more honest answers that aren't as hype culture driven, that aren't as sensationalized. And that's what the media should do. And part of that is reporting. So, a question that I'm sure has been asked is, well, what's the difference between what Jason Schreier wrote at Bloomberg when he reported it's going to be set in Vice City, there's going to be a female protagonist, as opposed to a guy dumping test footage? What's the difference? Besides the extortion, because there's one huge difference.
One is, legal differences.
Yeah. But I think Schreier's story, one, wasn't just about the game. A lot of people took and re-reported the game details. But if you remember, that story wasn't just, hey, here's details about GTA 6. It was also, here's how Rockstar's culture has changed.
Yeah.
Because that was sort of a sequel to his story 2 years ago about Red Dead Redemption 2 and the work culture changing around Rockstar.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just a story about details of GTA 6. There was more there. But what outlets re-reported was the juicy stuff that a lot of internet commenters care about. They don't care about the culture. They care about, how many hours do I get to drive a car? I hope that's not too pretentious, but I think that's also the truth. So that's what gets taken, and that's what gets re-reported. But I also think there is something about being honest about what a game is, and you have to decide, should I report this? So when there are outlets that I trust, when if Kotaku reports something, if Bloom with Jason Schreier, if Wired, Cecilia D'Anastasio at Wired, Wesley and Poole at Eurogamer, if they report something about a game, I'm going to trust their judgment because they're good outlets, they do good work, as opposed to just dumping information, because that's not trying to get something out to the public that the public needs to see, or that you think helps people understand a game or comprehend a game or whatever. That's just dumping stuff because you want to set a precedent so you can try and force extortion, right? Or because there's some other controversy, like the Naughty Dog leak, where I don't think there was an extortion portion of that story. It was just controversy around like fake stuff, like Joel and shit like that, right? And so there was one other thing I wanted to get into, just wrap it up.
To wrap back to like, how do companies get this information out, and for us too, they're dealing with one company that has figured it out, and I always bring them up because they've somehow figured out the games industry. Is my favorite developer, Paradox Interactive.
Sure.
To talk about, upcoming games, they're releasing a game in October, right? And so what do? Instead of, going to the press, trying to like drip feed information. They stream their game as is. Like they have a disclaimer towards the beginning, when they introduce themselves, that the game is hot code. It is code that just came out of development from the people working on the game, put onto their computer to play for stream. And they're bombarded with questions by the fans, trying to get any information out about the game. And they'll talk about some of the stuff. They might, gloss over some things like, oh, we haven't really finished that side of the game yet, so we're not going to talk about that. We might talk about it next week after, stuff like that. But they've done this with 3 games now. They did it with Stellaris, Hearts of Iron, and now Victoria 3. And the 3 games have had good community, acceptance and, a good dialogue between the developer and the community on expectations of the game. And it's because they're just transparent with what they're doing. Like, here's our game in full. We're going to show you guys 4 hours of gameplay each week up until release.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they do also give information out to press and everything, but it starts with them putting out their game. And I know not every company can do that. Not every, like, if you start streaming the next Last of Us, like if Last of Us 3 gets announced, they start streaming it, you're gonna ruin a lot of the game because it's
heavily narrative based.
Yes. But if you're a smaller developer, maybe that's like doing some more open-ended style games, maybe think about that route. Starting up a Twitch account and just streaming your game. Like, here's where we are. Here's what we're doing. Here's our plan.
Yeah.
Like, not necessarily involve the community, but be transparent with the community that's going to be playing your game.
Yep. I think so. Yeah. And a lot of companies do that. A lot of companies will have streams. They'll release, 45 minutes of gameplay on YouTube or whatever. So that's definitely a strategy. I think, and I do think some of this is on the press, because I think at some point, and press is a really vague term. I guess content creation, press outlets, media in general, at some point, there's only so much you're going to know about an upcoming game, and you just have to stop. You have to stop the endless speculation. You have to stop the endless, trying to get, because have patience, the game will release. Find a different hobby, do something else until the game comes out.
Read a book.
That sounds pretentious, but I think it's true, because as you endlessly try and generate content from something it's like, I don't know, it's like you're squeezing juice from an orange, but the orange doesn't exist, right? Like a week before a game's out, you're not going to get any details, right?
Yeah.
So why are you trying to speculate about what could be in the game, or worry about whether the game's going to do this or that? I don't know. I do think, and this gets into hype culture, I do think that there is a problem, and I think a lot of people would agree with this. I'm not like a genius for saying this, but there is a problem in media, not just press outlets. I think probably more heavily skewed to content creation, where because people crave constant news about the next game, that's a really lucrative field of content creation. New details about the blah 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 just released, blah blah blah, right? Because it's this new thing about this game that's going to come out that banks on this endless need for more information, but that endless need doesn't have any substance, because the game is going to release, your questions will be answered, reviews will be out, and at that point, it's like you don't have to worry about all these little tiny questions you have about the game. So I think as content creators, what we can do to resolve that, well, one, what Paradox does is a good way on the company side, on the development side, on the publishing side,
is
it's just
ridiculous transparency.
Now, not all companies are going to do that. Some companies are scumbags, Electronic Arts, blah blah blah, right? So they're going to do other shit. But on the game creation, on the content creation side, I think a good way is just to be boring about it and say, no, I'm not going to make 6 videos about speculating about what could be in Cyberpunk a year, out of Cyberpunk's release, because that's just churning cheap content that's not really doing anything. That's just endless speculation, and it creates cultures where this sort of thing happens and is valuable. And not valuable in the sense that it's intrinsically good, but valuable in the sense that people want it.
There's a monetary value to it.
Yeah, there's like a monetary or social value to it, which there shouldn't be. So, Starfield's going to release in a few months. And, if I think outlets that have everything we know about Starfield, I think that's a good way to do it. Here's everything we know. I think a bad way to do it is to write a story a week about new details or something else somebody said, that it's just re-reporting it, right? Because obviously if a game director says our game is 200 hours long and it gets out into the wild, well then you, as the press, you need to go, okay, we got to inspect this claim because now we have a bunch of consumers who are like 200 hours long. Oh my God. So it's like, maybe we should try and unpack this, as opposed to just saying it's 200 hours long. Whoa. Right. And like putting that out there as a story. Does any of that make sense?
No. Yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
Because it's kind of nebulous, because how do you stop hype culture? Like, what do you mean? It's not that you just stop talking about the game. It's not that you stop being excited for the game, but endless speculation, endless ringing of that content, of that, ad revenue rag, just creates hype cultures and ridiculous amounts of speculation that doesn't need to be there.
And I just want to throw in real quick that we're not saying that it's not okay to be excited about a game. Be excited about games coming out. But, you can only milk so much milk from a cow before it runs dry. And
if the culture were to go more that way, these leaks and, the real people like the Real Insider, they wouldn't have as much impact. They wouldn't have as much traction because people just don't care, because that kind of stuff just doesn't matter. So it wouldn't matter that you have inside information because nobody gives a shit. So it lessens its potency, right? So I think it's on publishers and developers, it's on press and content creators. And I think it's also on consumers to just listen, the game's going to come out. You'll have all your questions answered. Maybe don't browse the subreddit 6 years in advance. Again, okay, maybe you can. There's nothing intrinsically wrong with that. But anyway, we ready to move on?
Yes.
PSVR 2. Oh, sorry, Connor. This is your story, Connor.
PSVR 2
tell us what's going on.
Will not be backwards compatible. It was confirmed on the official PlayStation podcast. Senior VP of the platform, Hideki Nishino, said PSVR games will not be compatible with PSVR 2, because PSVR 2 is designed to deliver a truly next-gen experience. This means developing games for PSVR 2 requires a whole different approach than PSVR. Specifically, Nishino mentioned new features like inside-out tracking, eye tracking, new controls with haptic feedback, and adaptive triggers.
Yeah, so this is disappointing. One, because there weren't... off the top, Richard would know because Richard has had a PSVR, but I don't remember PSVR being that massive of a library. So, but at the same time, it's like we're the only place to play those games now, especially the PlayStation ones.
Yeah,
is going to be PSVR, and that's it. Like, that kind of sucks. And also, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
because
you're adding features to your next games.
Yeah, so
the previous games can't work.
Yeah, and it really bothered me listening to this podcast, and because this podcast was clearly just a commercial.
And can we say that the phrase "a truly next-gen experience" is a garbage phrase that means nothing?
Yeah, it is 1,000% a toilet paper phrase. Like that you might as well just say. Just throw any three words in there. Truly a Metal Gear Solid experience. Truly a Horizon Zero. Truly a Dungeons Dragons dive in and dives.
You're reading my shirt.
Yeah, on your shirt.
Yeah.
Like just any couple words in there. Just word salad shit.
Truly a Flavor Town experience.
Truly a Flavor Town gangsta cheese fries experience. Like it means
put that on a flip flop and it'll still taste good.
It literally means nothing, and that's ridiculous. And this is the problem. This is what we were talking about.
Yeah.
This is hype culture, right? Because none of that means anything. Now, Nishino. I don't know who this guy is. I'm sure he's great. Probably has kids. fantastic father, all that stuff. He was reading, right? You could tell he was reading. And I think
it was written for him. This wasn't necessarily his opinion.
And I think that's fine because people that work on games, these executives, they don't always, part of their skill set isn't always public speaking. Mm-hmm. So don't shove them out onto a stage and go, be funny. So it's like, just let them read something, whatever. Now, the pre-prepared statement is a thing on its own. But, I think this bothers me because that wasn't a reason. It's not backwards compatible because the headset's too complicated. It's like, well, that doesn't really explain anything. I don't know. And it gets into PlayStation's whole attitude. PlayStation has just been so hung up on figuring this out, and it bothers me because I don't see why. I'm sure there may be technical reasons. I'm sure there are.
There probably are technical reasons, or it's just a different language between the two headsets that just makes it difficult to transfer the games from one to the other.
I know what you're saying. I don't want to be a backseat developer either because I clearly have no idea what it takes. To make a headset or develop for that headset, But God damn it, I'm playing Half-Life 2 on a Valve Index.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's hard for me to imagine that a PSVR 2 couldn't play a game that came out in 2016 when I'm playing a game that came out in 2004 or whatever.
Yeah.
When consumer VR headsets did not exist and were almost a decade out from existing, So it's
the only VR gaming headset was from Beachhead 2000.
a really cheesy
arcade game.
That was barely even a headset. It's just a big screen you lowered down to your face. It really wasn't a headset.
It went around your head.
You look like Darth Helmet with that thing on. I don't know. This disappoints me. I'm a game where we are preservationists, and it makes me think do I need to get a PSVR to
just backlog all these games just so they exist somewhere?
Just so they exist, just so because now the PSVR is the only headset that can play some VR games, and that sucks because VR or console-based VR is a really young medium, and it's only PSVR unless you count Nintendo Labo. Come on, we don't. I mean, I don't want to get bomb threats. Never mind. Nintendo Labo, best VR headset on the market. So it sucks that it's not gonna be there, and that we got this really weird maybe not hand wavy, but sidestepping, I guess, of an answer. But oh well. Richard's not here.
No,
so we don't have tidbits.
We do not.
Is there anything else you want to talk about, just in general?
Star Trek Ascendancy.
Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse, Patreon.com/The Gaming Discourse. And we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.